stream. What I wanted to do today is be able to do a short live and just talk about the Bible and religion and stuff like that for a while. You know, talk about the Bible, talk about religion, talk about spirituality and stuff like that, you know? Okay. Now, there's lots of religions out there. There's lots of religions out there and lots of religious beliefs out there, you know? Lots of religions, lots of churches, lots of faiths, lots of beliefs out there. Yeah, you know? There's lots. Hey, Larly, I see you. You know, there's lots of faiths and lots of beliefs and religions out there, and religious beliefs out there. But you know, Jesus said, "By their fruits you shall know them." Jesus said, "By their fruits you shall know them." Hold on, just a minute. Hello. You got to think about the behavior of people in a certain church group, different denominations or religions, to see how people react. Now, some people that are really, really evangelical, hardcore evangelical, some people, now there was a guy named Keith Green that I used to really listen to and was really a big obsessed with when I was 18, 17 years old. A Christian singer, you know. But you know, and he had so much zeal, and I just had this mentality that everything he did was right, you know. But you know, but he was young and he was in his 20s, and he would go to church with people, and he had been a hippie, and then he was a hippie that got become a Christian, you know. And so he became a Christian, but he was so zealous, he would call people up in the church that went to the church that he was going to, and he would, you know, say, "You're living with your boyfriend, not married. You're not really married to your boyfriend. You're living in sin." And that he would call people and he would stick his nose in people's business. That, damn it, hold on, just hold on a minute. To see you. Good to see you, Molasses Cookies. Good to see you here. Okay, about Christianity and church and religion. Okay, now back to what I was saying. The point, you think about different churches. You know, I was 18, 19 years old. I was going to the Pentecostal and holiness charismatic churches and stuff like that, spirit-filled churches. And these holiness people are pretty strict and old-fashioned regular Baptist. They're all pretty old-fashioned churches and Mennonite churches and stuff like that. These old-fashioned churches, you know, they may be pretty strict, but I'm telling you, these people really, they do live some of the Bible, you know. Like I was saying before my live stream got cut off. You know, the fact is, as people, you know, this Ronnie Braun, good to see you in the house today, too. You know, there was this young guy that I was following when I was 18 years old, and I was obsessed with this guy named Keith Green, this Christian singer. And anyway, he was in his 20s, he was young, and he was going to church, and he was like a newly converted hippie in the 70s that was converted to Christianity. And so, and he was so enthused and had so much zeal and enthusiasm, but there were some people in church that he went to that were living in sin. And there was a girl that was living with her husband, not married, and they call that living in sin. So, you know, he called him and his young wife called up these people and said, "Hey, you all are living in sin. We got, you know, the Bible says you shouldn't be doing that." And walking up to people on the street and talking to people on the street, wanting to save people's souls, you know, and evangelizing to people on the street and everywhere you go, talking to people about Jesus. in public and on the streets. When you stick there's nothing wrong with telling people about Jesus. There's nothing wrong with witnessing to people or evangelizing. But, the Bible talks about people who are people. The Bible says nosy people, busybodies. They're sticking their nose in everybody else's business in the church, that they go to. They're sticking their nose in everybody else's business, especially young people. That when you're young, it says the Bible says in the New Testament, not a novice puffed up with pride, lest he fall into the same trap as the devil, He says the younger in church needs to submit to the elder in the church. And this zealous church guys that are 20 years old in the church are good, Larly, you understand. They're in the church and they have so much zeal and stuff like that. But the fact is, they have so much zeal and everything like that for the Lord. But what they're doing is they have so much zeal, but they have puffed up with pride and they're self-willed. They have a self-willed mentality in the Lord, and it says the younger in the church needs to submit to the elder. Believe it or not, at one time I was a hardcore evangelical at one time. I would walk up to people on the streets and ask them if they're saved and they're born again. Sometimes that's not always the good thing to do. I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but it's not good to be so zealous that you're sticking your nose in other people's business, It's, sticking your nose in other people's business in the church and in people's lives. It's not good to be puffed up with pride as a novice. It's important as a young person to talk about listen to the elders in the church and listen to these older people and submit to the older people in the church and to not be puffed up with pride and not be a busybody. Some of the people, doesn't the Bible say many people filling up the pews isn't even make it to heaven? That's true. There's a lot of people filling up the pews that won't make it to heaven. Not all the people talk about heaven ain't going there, like an old saying. But that's what I'm saying is if you go to church, you believe in God, it's important that you, thinking about, these people that live behind us are holiness. The holiness church people, and they're the best neighbors we've ever had because they mind their own business and they do their own thing, and that's how they live life, And it's good just to do your own thing, live right, be quiet. The Bible says in the New Testament we should be quiet, working with our hands, eating our own bread, not being busybodies in everyone else's business, to mind their own business. Be quiet, mind your own business, and work, That's what we're doing. We're minding our own business. We're working. We're minding our own business. We're eating our own bread. We're not busybodies. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm glad, Larly. I'm glad someone gets something out of it. So, that's the right way of a church going people. The people that are devout or people that are evangelical. It's not always the right way to do it. There's nothing wrong with talking to people about God, even if you get a lot of abuse on the streets from people. But it's important if a person is going to witness to people for the Lord and talk to people about God, you can't just talk to somebody for 5 minutes in a parking lot and expect them to get saved or to make a conversion, It's like a drive-through. I can't stand people that try to shove the religion down my throat. Yeah, Dustin, that's the truth. It takes, I've heard church people saying it takes several tries, several times of hearing the gospel for a person to even become a Christian to begin with. It takes a person several tries to actually hear the gospel. It takes several tries of hearing the gospel for a person. People have to have some these church meetings. They need to come to some church meetings. They need to hear a preacher. They need to hear the gospel more than just um, in a parking lot. And that's what I tried to do when I went to college. When I was going to college, I had these Christian pamphlets, and I would handle pamphlets, and walk up to people on campus. I would say, "Hey, are you saved? Are you born again?" To people, walk into their classes, asking people about religion, talking to people about religion, kind of like preaching to people one on one, telling people, this is the way it is. This is what you should do. Here's the Bible. You drink when you're a college student going to college and you drink alcohol, getting drunk. It's a sin. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. That's not the way to win people to, religious conversion or a spiritual awakening. You can't just walk up to someone on the streets and get them to experience a conversion experience, because it takes more than just one time on the streets to be able to make someone be converted. It takes more than that to convert someone. I just wanted to say there are religions and people focus on their own faith, focus on their own relationship with God and their own sins, and not focus on the sins of other people. We guess, evangelical people focus on winning people to Christ, focus on saving souls, focus on getting everybody saved. EKU, one of the biggest known party in colleges. I know. Well, that's a bar at the downtown in Richmond. Yeah. So that's just evangelical. In 1991, in 1989, I had grown up in church, and I made a profession of faith when I was like 10 years old. In church, in the Southern Baptist Church. Okay. And I did that, and then I started listening to heavy metal, and religion wasn't on my mind. In my mind, mentally, I had not made a true conversion experience, even though I grew up in church. I had not made my own profession of personal encounter with, a spiritual awakening mentally. I had not had my own spiritual awakening. That's kind of like a Christian way of thinking, of explaining what salvation is, and the experience of it would be in a religious awakening. If you're saved, if you're born again, if you have to have a personal experience with religion and God, and a religious awakening, an awakening to the things of religion, the things of spirituality, and of the otherworldly stuff. You have to have an awakening of otherworldly experience. Of salvation is, to you, if you're the one being saved, you are non-Christian, now you're becoming saved. And if you don't believe in Christianity, if you're some other religious belief, and some other faith like Buddhism or is whatever else, if you still believe in a conversion experience, you're believing in an awakening. Basically, your own personal religious awakening to where you see the light. You see what I'm saying? I mean, you can believe facts about God all you want to. That's the difference between someone who I think is believing in God and going to church that's not a Christian, or that's not born again. It's a person that knows all these facts and stuff, but they've not really had an awakening. They've not seen the light. You see what I mean? They've not seen the light. You have to see the light. And I do believe Rosie O'Kelly has seen the light. I do believe that. I think Rosie O'Kelly has had a religious awakening, and I do believe that Rosie O'Kelly has had a religious awakening, and that Rosie O'Kelly has seen the light somehow. I think that person has had religious awakening. That person has changed their behavior and their ways. They're changing the fundamental attitudes, being willing to admit that they've maybe did something wrong or whatever, and actually more willing to apologize on the live streams too. It's a religious awakening, and it can tell a difference. Asbury recently covered up a student who was beaten. Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that. Asbury College. Some of these religious places and stuff like that, and these Christian places really can cover up stuff that goes on. I think in the world of Christianity, it's not good to cover up things, but to, TLRLE, I don't know if they still have it or not, but the Igpoo Festival in Wilmore at Asbury College had the Igpoos Festival, the Christian Music Festival. I went to the Igpoos Festival, Christian Music Festival in 1993. And I met Larry Norman, the Christian singer. And, I shook hands with Larry Norman. He autographed my CD. And if you're into Christian music, you know who Larry Norman is, a legend in the contemporary Christian rock music, and one of the pioneers, founders of Christian rock. In 1969, he made an album, released an album in 1969 called "Upon This Rock," a Christian rock album, one of the first Christian rock albums, the fathers of Christian rock music. So Larry Norman, and at least in 1993, he came out of retirement to do a performance. So I gotta go. People are waiting to do. Let's see you next time. Bye bye. Oh yeah, I guess they were. That's true, Larly. I agree with you. That makes a lot of sense. That's okay. You're not arguing with me. You're fine. I got to get off here and do some stuff. But I'm sure. It's expensive. Well, just Christian doesn't mean it's really, really godly. Just because something's religious, they call. Sometimes they have commercialized religion. Religion and things are commercialized. Sometimes they take religious faith and stuff and they commercialize it. They have colleges, Christian colleges, and Christian music. They have a lot of things that are Christianized, but you're not getting down to the basics, bottom barrel basics of the faith, a religious faith. You're not getting down to the bottom barrel basics of your religious faith. We're building up institutions, which is good to build up an institution. There's nothing wrong with institutions, but you're building up institutions. You're building up organizations. And it's good to have institutions, but Jesus and the disciples, changed things to give the common man access to religious things. And they invented movable type so they could print Bibles that people could read, putting things in the hands of the layman. Back in the biblical times of ancient Israel, only scribes and Pharisees and truly educated people could ever read. Most people never had a Bible or anything to read. It was only through word of mouth and stuff that people heard about religion, God and stuff. It was through word of mouth. When that which is perfect has come, I will do away with these signs and wonders, because the movable type was produced. They produced a movable type. Bibles were printed. Movable type was invented. People could learn to read, and ciphering. That's what some people used to call it. They call it ciphering. Reading. You're reading, you're ciphering, you're reading stuff. You're learning to read yourself. You can have a Bible to read. That which is perfect has come. That which is complete has come. Now, I'm not saying that did away with miracles or signs and wonders or speaking in tongues or anything like that. I'm just saying that when they prophesied the complete knowledge was given of a Bible to read that you could have in your hands. Movable type was invented. People could read. They could print up Bibles on a printing press. That was a revolutionary thing when they invented the printing press. When they invented the printing press to press Bibles and to print Bibles for the masses, that really revolutionized everything. Sure, they transferred scrolls, and they had multiple copies of a scroll of the book of Isaiah. And a lot of your local synagogues churches would have a copy of the scroll. But, there's only so many copies of a scroll that can be hand copied, But when they get the movable type and printing out Bibles by the thousands, hundreds, they have multiple copies of these Bibles for people to read, And today with Bibles and books that people can read, we make it into something so cheap, You can take a Bible, just throw it around, or a book to read, or the internet to look at, to be able to see and learn. But what we have to realize is when they invented the movable type and the printing press, that was like the internet to those people back then in medieval times when they invented the printing press. That was like that was like that was like an internet. That was like the internet to them because they were all of a sudden libraries where people could learn to read. They could go to these libraries. They could read these books. They're institutions of knowledge. These libraries are physical libraries with books. They had physical books, libraries full of books that you could read. And where is the host of the internet? You know, at a big college library, like at Eastern's Library, I worked at the EKU library when I went to college and at EKU. So the EKU library is 3 floors in a basement. Or is it 2 floors in the basement? I think it's 3 floors in the basement. You have the periodicals department down in the basement. And in the periodicals department, you have magazines, and they have lots of current magazines, newspapers, even current magazines. Now, at the public library, you're not going to get that at a small public library. You got to go to a college library, a big library, and they have all kinds of magazines, current magazines to read, all these current magazines to read. And they have all these current magazines to read. And at a real library, a big, big library, where they have all the current magazines that you can get. And you can read these magazines. You can print off copies of these things, you know. You can find books to read. You can get reference books, how-to books, dictionaries, encyclopedias, medical books, textbooks. Any kind of book that you want to read at a library you can get. You can get novels, fiction, history, you know, any kind of subject in magazines, books, libraries, bookstores. Those were the internet, the World Wide Web of pre-internet times. When I started working at the library at EKU in 1992, we didn't have the internet. It didn't have the card catalog online. Today we have card catalogs online. You type in on a computer what book you want to get, and it'll tell you on a screen. In about 1995, at the library, they put the or 94, maybe 94, they put the card catalog online in like 1994. When I started there in 1992, they had the old-fashioned card catalog. Big cabinets full of little bitty drawers full of index cards, 3x5 index cards with a duodecimal system and A through B, B through D, and and a big giant room full of these big cabinets. And these big cabinets host thousands, maybe millions of these little index cards in these little bitty drawers in this big cabinet. And they have a department in the library that my mother worked at when she was going to college, a department called cataloging, where they took the index cards. They had a typewriter. They didn't have a computer to type up those index cards to go in the card catalog. They had a typewriter, an old-fashioned typewriter, and they would type up with a typewriter, type up the names and all the information about this book on that index card. They would have a little card slip that goes in the book, and you have the card catalog that'll tell you where to go. Everything was on paper, And if you wanted something online, there were small computer networks before the internet, but they were only private computer networks. It wasn't the internet. It was just individual private computer networks. Even the government was the first one to have a computer network. But it was not accessible to the average person, None of that was. But also cable and satellite TV. Cable and satellite TV was another way that people had the advantages of the internet in pre-internet times. Cable access, local cable access, or cable or satellite TV, you could pay so much money to have a time slot on TV, on cable access TV. And it could be you or a local church or whatever to get up on that TV screen and go on television yourself. Paid broadcasting, where you pay so much money to put yourself in front of a camera and go on cable access local TV. And it's, you put yourself on local cable access TV, and they would have they would put a phone number at the bottom of the screen, and people would troll them and call in prank calls to the people doing their live stream, their cable access TV show. Like a preacher, a local preacher, is going to get on TV, on cable access TV, and that person, the preacher, is going to preach on a local cable access TV channel where his church pays so much money for him to get on there and do it. And then he would have a phone number at the bottom of the screen, and people could call in, and people would call in and say nasty stuff, because they didn't always have a 30-second delay with these local broadcasts. So the nastiness would come through. Another way people could chat with each other is on the CB radio. You see what's going on the CB. You listen to other people chatting locally on the CB radio, ham radio. That's how you talk to people in other countries before the internet. They have ham radio, where people can talk to each other through ham radio. And you can talk to someone in Germany through ham radio. There's basically the ham radio frequencies. There's shortwave radio. I'll do another video about all the alternatives to internet life existed before the internet. Mass communication, social media and mass communication before the internet. I will catch you guys on the flip side. I don't think anybody's listening. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye. Look for that video.